Nate,
All
I
right,
came very
welcome to the
prepared today.
podcast, everybody.
Let's go.
Now that Matt has stepped away, it's podcast starting time.
I
You
never
can
left.
actually see him up there. So what's good?
We just had a cinematic come out. Welcome to Noxus. Kind of the new buzz and hype that everyone's talking about because it's basically an Arcane epilogue.
Yeah, I'm excited. I did not expect it to be an Arcane epilogue when I saw it. Otherwise, I would have watched it with Nikki.
The quality drop was insane. I did not think that we were going to get something that good.
Oh.
Honestly, after Still Here,
When you said quality drop, I was like, what are you talking about? It looked better than Arcane.
After Still Here, I kind of expect this from Riot Cinematics at this point. Okay, between two things. Between the flop of 2023's non-cinematic and how awesome Still Here was, I don't expect Riot to drop the ball again on their cinematics, especially with the popularity and success of Arcane.
Yeah, because that's kind of becoming like well, I was going to say that's just like the central pivot of the universe now. Like everything's becoming canon to that.
It's just really nice to see attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just nice to see that they are really like creating unity around that. Like, not to say some of the other cinematics we've had over the last like 10 years have also been great. But like the continuous unity and like the storyline, the quality and everything was really cool. I mean, like Nate, even I laughed at it, but in the chat that we have our wives in, where you posted it and you're like, hey, here's an epilogue video for Arcane if you guys have finished season 2.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of cool. Like you're still including the non-game fandom in the fandom.
Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah, I think that's the number one thing that they've, because the MMO's not out yet. So the people that care about Arcane are going to keep caring about cinematics that come out of the universe. Like, I think them dropping a really high quality cinematic right now is a really good thing, because people are like, oh, there's still like more stuff that'll just pop up. That's awesome, because they don't care about playing any of the other games. Ain't nobody coming to play League of Legends. I mean, we were just talking about this, but but realistically, people that are going to the show because it's a cool show are not going to be like, all right, let me be a MOBA master now. Like, there might be some, but those people are going to really care about cinematics, so Riot's not going to want to drop the ball on those. Like, it'll be really important for them to keep up the quality, which clearly they think too. So
also good.
No, you go.
Well, it's kind of a pivot, so.
Well, I was just gonna say that's such like a weird idea to think about, of like you or me bringing our wives to like Worlds 2026, and it's just like, hey, why are you here? And it's like, I really like Mel from Arcane. I guess there's North American teams here. Like there'll be fans like that, and it'll be funny and kind of cool to see like people like that coming into the franchise, or like, even the TCG people as well.
It'll be like people that enjoyed watching football because of Taylor Swift. That's what it's like.
Mm-hmm. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah, go team! Woo!
Yeah,
it's exactly what it is.
It was definitely something I made fun of a lot until I saw that, like, instead of the Taylor Swift fans, like the moms and like the older women, a lot of dads were saying that they loved it because their daughters were trying to watch the games just for a glimpse of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And so football Sundays became like a thing with their daughters, and I was like, aw, you know what, that's really cute. I love that. So changed my mind a little bit on that side.
Also, we had to get a little Taylor Swift mention in there just so that, you know, YouTube might think that this is about Taylor Swift, and we might get recommended more. So that works out.
Is there like a 7 degrees of Taylor Swift yet?
I mean,
I feel like that's probably a thing because of how many internet searches she gets, right?
There has to be.
Okay.
What was your pivot?
Oh, yeah. So I thought it was interesting that they named this cinematic the season 1 cinematic.
Yep.
Because to me that kind of alludes to we may be getting 3 cinematics a year now for each of the different seasons.
In 6 comics.
And
that makes sense.
Yes, and 6 comics, which I think is also really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like we're going to get 3 cinematics and 6 comics, which is awesome. And they're like motion comics, so they're not just like sit down and read. It's like it's
interactive.
It's almost like another cinematic, but just in comic form, which is sick.
Also, the sound design on that comic was really cool. Like, really at first I was like kind of skipping through each of the things just so I could read it. But the second time I went through it, I let everything play out like really slowly, and the animations are like way longer than I expected.
It was sick. I like it.
It's also a really good like rollout plan for like the cinematic and the lore universe for them, because that's one thing that I love. If obviously everybody for a while has been getting like MCU fatigue, because that's one franchise where like it blew up. And then it was just constantly like shows and side projects and like tons of stuff you had to follow to be in the know about the system. But then the guy behind Guardians of the Galaxy has become part of the DC universe and runs that. And when he initially came out with his plan to relaunch the universe, he said he's like, yeah, we're going to actually do like movies, some TV shows, and animation. Because animation is such like a quicker way of storytelling, we can keep people interested and like introduce new characters and stuff in the universe, but not have to wait like several years and like people lose interest or don't remember like all these finite details and stuff. And so this is a really good way for Riot to do it, because it's like, hey, you know, the Noxus show is not probably going to come out for 2 years, a year and a half at least, like late 2025, you think?
So I actually do now think it's going to be this year at the end of 2025, and we're going to get teasers for it for Worlds, only because this entire year is centered around Runeterra, and that's in all of League's IP, whether it's Wild Rift, TFT, League of Legends, and every one of the seasons goes to a different region of Runeterra. So if they're going to continue the Arcane storyline in Noxus, it makes sense for them to do it while everyone is focused on Runeterra. And then next year for them to pivot to their different alternative universes, they could probably go back to Star Guardian or like they mentioned the bees in the dev blog post. So I think AU is going to be next year. It would make the most sense for them to release all of their Runeterra stuff, and that would include like either season 1 or a like very heavy teaser for or early look at the show for Noxus at the end of this year.
Okay, because I mean, Worlds is potentially going to be like pushed back a little bit with the extra tournament as well. So if we're looking at like a teaser coming around for Worlds in like mid-October to like November, I don't know if the show's dropping, because I feel like that's too soon of a drop rate for a show, especially if it's part of Netflix. Netflix wants to get advertisements out, and they're going to get advertisements out at least 6 months in advance. So I think we would have to see something like the teaser that you're talking about would have to be like a end of Split 2 kind of thing.
So by teaser, I meant more like a music video like Paint the Town Blue was for Arcane Season 2 coming out. But you're probably right. In the middle of Split 2 or Season 2, between Split 1 and 2, there likely needs to be like a, hey, this is coming out.
Oh, MSI actually. MSI might be a good time to release that.
Yeah.
I would bet that it's going to be in 26. I don't think that the show's coming out this year. I see what you're saying, where like this year is when they're generating a lot of hype with all the seasons being Runeterra based, and next year the seasons aren't necessarily going to be Runeterra based. Like I get what you're saying there, but I don't see the show coming out this year. I think that would be, they would have had to turn it up to 11 in order to make that happen. So I don't think that that's going to be the
they
case.
were already working on it during them working on season 2 of Arcane. They were already working on this next show, which we're assuming is going to be Noxus based.
Yep.
So I think that they're right now likely 2 years into the project. By the end of 2025, that'll be 3 years, and that's usually the production time for a show of this caliber.
I don't think they wouldn't have. Maybe they did a little bit of work on the show while Arcane was being done, but they probably started actually working on the show once they had finished Arcane. So they're probably like a year into the show, I would say. I don't think they're going to be 2 years into the show at this point.
Okay, but even if so, that means that they're 2 years into the project at the end of next year. And I feel like they could be done by then. If a lot of the production slowdowns from Arcane season 1 and 2 was their contracts with Netflix, getting Fortiche up and running as a production company, all of those prerequisites are done. And so maybe the amount of time between shows is going to be less than in between seasons. I can still see season 1 and 2 being 3 years apart, because that's kind of like the normal cycle. But between the end of Arcane and the beginning of the next show, I don't necessarily know if there's that kind of constraint.
I think what is more likely is that the first season of the show comes out in 26, so that they can kind of get a ball rolling, and they can have a show or a season come out in 26, have a season come out in 27, maybe in 28. So we're not waiting for years between shows anymore. It's like every single year there's going to be a new season of a show. I think they're going to take their time a little bit now that Arcane is done, and it's going to come out in 26, and we're going to be rolling at that point. That's what I'm thinking.
If I'm not mistaken, don't they have a live action team as well as an animation team?
That's the rumor.
Yes, they are also working. Well, they were working on a live action. I've heard some stuff as to that might have potentially gotten canned.
Okay. Without knowing that information, my initial thought was that in between the years that something animated wasn't coming out, that at the end of the year they would release something live action, and so that they could ping pong off of both of one or the other and still have a consistent stream of content.
Yeah. I had thought about that too at some point.
So two things. One, I completely agree with your idea of the release cycle, Nate. And just kind of like to tone it extra, like the Welcome to Noxus aspect. If they do like season 1, 2, and 3, and they have videos, like you said, KJ, I think they could actually do it where like potentially it's going to be like Noxus, Ionia, and Demacia having some like struggles together. What if
I would say not in that order, but yes.
What if the 3 seasons show insight into the 3 regions? This was Noxus. You go into Demacia or Ionia next, and then finish off with the third one.
I do.
And
think
then
that...
at the next year, like you said, when they pivot away from like base Runeterra and they go into their expanding universe, multiverse, skinline universe, whatever you want to call it, that's when they drop the show. So they also have 3 seasons of like skin lines to interest people in those kind of things, but they still have the baseline of like, here's the content that goes with the rest. It's kind of like a mix and match of both. Also, I just wanted to throw in to kind of what you were saying as well about how like they could be 2 years in and probably done with it. It brought to mind one of the creators of not Breath of the Wild, but Tears of the Kingdom. He said that people were questioning him on like how come it took so long for the game to come out, and he said we were actually done with it, like completely and utterly done 6 to 8 months ago, almost a full year, and they kept it from releasing because they were like, we want to make this a good ass game with as few glitches as possible, and so we're going to run it through every single system we have to refine this, because there's going to be no DLC for this. This is one game, and we're going to make it a good-ass game. And they did that. But maybe that's something that I also think this studio is potentially doing. Because, dude, look at all the Easter eggs we're seeing. Look at all like the storyline setting up. Like, this is the new basis for the lore, for the entire universe, for the MMO, for everything. Like, I feel like they are picking through stuff with a fucking toothpick and being like, what can we put in the background here that will like get the nerds like us excited about it, you know? Like where can they put a fairy charm hanging in the window that one person will like screech about when they see it?
That's half Fortiche and half Riot, because Fortiche, they've commented and said that they are huge like League players and they love the IP a lot as well. And so they offer suggestions of different Easter eggs and things that they can put in that some of the showrunners or the Rioters either didn't think of or it just didn't come up. Either way, Fortiche is adding a level of inspiration for that as well. So I think the upscale time for that is now even less because both sides are working not only towards the same goal, but have a lot of the same tact and different ways to get to that in mind.
But you also have to take into account, not to like dissuade from what you're saying, but you have to take into account, especially with we kind of talked about this before the podcast, but Arcane when it was released was not meant to be canon.
Yeah.
Like it was a fun side project that they wanted to like garner interest from for people. And then when it became so yes. And they made it canon and started pivoting all their lore to center around that show. Now, if this Noxus show, which could contain Demacia and Ionia and, you know, who knows what else, maybe some Shadow Isle stuff. We'll see how far it goes.
At least
but if it goes that far and it has at least 2, if not, I think for 3 regions, it should have 3 seasons. If it goes 3 seasons, they have to set up that first season to build off of what's going to happen over those 3 seasons, so there's not inconsistencies. And I feel like between Riot and the studio and how they set up specifically Arcane Season 2 and Season 1, but mostly Season 2, I think that's probably the refinement they have to go through of like making sure that they don't make mistakes or like cause character errors in their writing for this new story. And I think that combined with the release, it's going to be 26.
So something that you said, I want to like parse through because it sounded as though you were saying that the Noxus show, its multiple seasons will encompass Demacia and Ionia. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I think there'll be separate shows. I think the Noxus show will lead us up to Noxus's invasion of Demacia. Because this cinematic with Darius fighting Trundle has him in the Frostguard fighting the Winter's Claw, which happens in the last years of Darkwill's reign. So we have kind of an exact time of where we are in Noxus's history. And so if we're starting the show with Swain just now coming into power and the Triforks being established, a lot of that dynamic seems to be like too much to handle in one season. So it's likely that is going to be 2 or 3 seasons in and of itself and be a self-contained thing. And then the invasion of Demacia started by LeBlanc, whispering to Jarvan.
Ionia.
I'm sorry?
The invasion of Ionia, not Demacia.
No, Demacia comes before the second invasion of Ionia. So the first invasion of Ionia is with Darkwill, which has already happened by the end of Arcane Season 2, because Darius is in the Frostguard, and the only time that he goes there is after he is named Hand of the King by Darkwill. And then when he returns, Noxus is in civil war, and Swain has just taken over after assassinating Darkwill. So where we are is very, very specific in the Noxus timeline because of this cinematic.
Well, it's possible the first invasion hasn't happened, because you said the first invasion hadn't happened when Darius was sent out. By the time
no, it has. The first so Darius goes out, the first invasion happens, and by the time he comes back, Swain is in power.
So he goes out, and then the invasion happens.
Hold on, let me.
Almost like it was a strategic coup.
There we go. Sorry, I was doing a lot of research last night.
Yeah, you were going a little bit ham-bone on that cinematic. You were having a good time with that.
I really was.
I was at work when it all came out, so I didn't get to see it until like a day or 2 later.
Did you read the comic at all?
No, I did not get to the comic. I watched the cinematic. I went through the dev video, and then I was checking out, skimming over some of Necrit's stuff to see if he found anything that I hadn't seen.
Did you see Necrit's video on the comic, or?
No, I didn't. I didn't watch that because I don't like to watch stuff if I haven't checked out the base content first. Normally,
I agree. That comic is pretty sick though, and it ties in a little bit with because they're coming out together. It kind of ties into the cinematic, and just I have way more questions after reading the comic because I don't know. I think the comic happens, or at least the end of the comic, I think is after the end of the cinematic. But the comic starts with Sanuzal, which is Mordekaiser, as a human. So it starts way back when. But I think the end of the comic is after the end of the cinematic.
Okay.
I could see that, yes. And I just went back to check my notes real quick. The invasion of Ionia happens. That whole thing is fully completed, and then Darius goes to the Freljord. As the Hand of the King, or Hand of Noxus. Sorry, got a little Game of Thrones on you. So this is, like I said, a very specific time in Noxus, and where we are in the timeline. And then after the Trifix Revolution, you have the Denoasian invasion after the whole Swain thing, and Swain or Cassiopeia is looking for the power in Shurima to basically stop Swain from being in power. So that kind of also goes to another timeline or another storyline that they could possibly do in another show as well.
So it's likely that that's interesting. That changes a lot of what I was. So it's likely at this point that the Noxus show is going to be of the struggles that Swain has after taking power, and not necessarily being Swain taking the power.
Yeah, I think it's the Trifix Revolution and the resettling of the Noxian government and establishing the Trifix proper once Darius comes back. And specifically, Draven helps Swain with the rebellion, which is part of the reason that Darius gets on board with Swain after taking out Darkwill, because Darius is a very loyal soldier to Noxus and wants to do whatever is best for Noxus. Yeah. And because Draven basically convinces him that Swain is that, and Darkwill was not.
And Swain is absolutely that too. I mean, Darius doesn't know that, but we know that Swain is absolutely that. It doesn't necessarily, there could be a little bit of time differences with the cinematic jumping to different spots. So it is possible that there are, the show will still show the first invasion, but it will also show the Darius going to the Freljord and all that. It's possible that we're still going to see the first invasion, but it's likely that we're not.
The reason I don't think so is LeBlanc is looking at what is happening currently. And I say that because after she makes the wolf come out of the ink, we immediately go to Mel. And it seems to be like a 1-to-1. And so she's seeing things as they're happening now. It doesn't seem like she's an omnipotent person. She is an omniscient person. So she knows everything that is happening as it's happening. And she can use that to predict the future, but she doesn't know the future and what's going to play out. So I would argue that everything that's happening in the cinematic is happening right now.
They're all happening concurrently. I think that's probably true. But that also changes, because you and I have talked a lot about this, or at least the other day we talked a lot about this. And it seemed like at that time you were suggesting that LeBlanc's plans were about the invasion and about convincing Darkwill, but that's not going to be the case with what you're saying now. What you're saying now is Darkwill's already dead, and LeBlanc's talking about these plans, and she's talking about the whole Otacon thing. Like, who is she convincing? Like, there's like, because we were talking about the first invasion. We were talking about convincing Darkwill and that kind of stuff, but that can't be the case if what you're saying is true, which is kind of crazy. And also, in earlier musings, you were suggesting that the dagger or the like misty thing that looks like LeBlanc is looking at.
Yeah.
You were suggesting it looks like Neferi's blade. I was suggesting that it being Neferi's blade doesn't make it looks a lot like it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for it to be referencing Neferi specifically. And I had mused that it might be Riven's blade, which Riven is a very important person to LeBlanc, so there's a theory there, but it does look more like Neferi's blade. But the Necrit suggests that it could be Darkin related and also could be Riven related. So it sounds like we might have both been kind of, according to Necrit, on a similar page. And he even says that LeBlanc might have been trying to make Riven's blade a Darkin blade.
So it can't be Riven's blade, in my opinion, because Riven is currently in Ionia and is self-exiled in between the two invasions. So because of where Darius puts us in the timeline, Riven is in Ionia. So unless LeBlanc is planning to go to Ionia to get aforementioned blade, which I don't think so, because it seems as though they're separating each of these regions, Noxus, Demacia, and Ionia, into their separate shows or entities, that they likely won't tease something about the show that comes out 2 shows later when they haven't even started season 1 of this show.
Maybe.
If they were doing it at the first invasion when Riven actually plays a part, then I would 100% agree. But because this is after the first invasion, but before the second, Riven is in the countryside of Ionia with her broken blade exiled.
We could also see some permutations of basically like while Swain takes over some like, what are those people called? Like diplomats being in the area, and them possibly causing people like Yasuo or Riven to like come to their rescue in order to bring them back to the homeland, or like even some extent of like some Demacian people like interfering on the outskirts of it. Because it's like in Arcane, while they were right next door to each other, we did have 2 cities that were like pretty deep within like the space and that they existed. So I could still see touching on them, and I could even see like a callback to where like Darius goes and like baits like an enemy like troop into Trundle's area to get Trundle to beat the shit out of them or something, like some sort of callback like that in Noxus. I could see something like that, or they just leave it behind. But there was also a lot of like, one thing I wanted to mention, which we just talked about, was the Darkened Blade, which I think that is Neferi's blade. Like the eye on it, like everything about it looks way too similar.
The wrong way, but
yeah,
Neferi's blade should be, the eye should be like this, but it's like this in that one.
But one other thing I noticed from the cinematic was, and I could be wrong on this, but it looks like Mel arrives on a beach, and it looks like that beach is potentially the Blood, Sweat, and Tears beach.
It is.
It's the exact same beach. It's the beach of Rockruund. It's Embess's like homeland basically.
Yep.
Yeah, so I just thought that was cool that like that's where it shows her like returning to Noxus is from that point. Yeah, and you can
actually, she's basically standing in the same place that Embessa is standing. Like if you put the 2 scenes side by side, they're like standing in the same spot. It's actually really sick.
I'm gonna post both of them in the host chat, because I actually took both of those screenshots
of course
in preparation for this episode, because I'm prepared today. Nate, you mentioned in one of our conversations earlier this week that it also felt demon-esque to you. This the way that the quote unquote darkened blade was kind of shaped. And I think you might be onto something, and it has to be
before we got
related as well.
Yeah, and it was before we got the comic that involves Octagon, a demon, which is interesting.
But now we have the timeline also to tie it in. So, what if LeBlanc is trying to bind Raum away from Swain so that she is the most powerful of the Triferics? instead of him.
Yeah.
And she's experimenting with Otacon in how to use binding magic with a demon so that she can basically do the same thing with Swain.
Could she potentially already have bound Rom, like within the Raven? Is he potentially stuck within that form?
No, because
no,
Swain figures out. So Swain figures out from like looking in a Raven's eyes in the the first invasion of Ionia that realm exists, and it specifically says that Realm did not see coming somebody being able to control them, basically. So like, Realm should be, before Swain gets a hold of them, free and doing whatever a demon wants to do and gathering all the secrets. No. And then
he's in the Immortal Bastion.
Well, yeah, he is, but not
you mean the Raven
portion
of him.
I'm suggesting that Realm is not being controlled by anybody until Swain, because it says something like it did not ever think that somebody could control them, basically, in Swain's bio.
But he is still captive right now. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
So at the time of the first invasion, well, actually, I don't know when Tybold gets out, but Mordekaiser had trapped Otacon, Realm, and Tybold all in the Immortal Bastion when they were in charge. And so I believe at the time of the first invasion, all three of those demons are still trapped. At least those three demons are trapped in the Immortal Bastion. I don't know when Tybold gets put into Annie, but it should be around that time that Tybold gets put into Annie. And that is so interesting, because that actually does tie in, because you're talking about the magic that was used on Otacon to put it in the helmet, because the Black Rose and LeBlanc specifically do that to Annie. They put Tybold in Annie. So they've already put a demon inside a person, which is also kind of what Swain does. Swain takes the demon and puts it inside him. And then Otacon is stuck inside that helmet, but was also combined with a person at some point. This is stuff that happened in the comic, Matt.
Oh, okay. That's what I figured.
In the comic, basically, San Uzal's like general gets killed by Otacon, and then San Uzal kills Otacon, and then combines his general and Otacon together, and then makes like a new demon that just messes everything up. And then they bound it to his helmet, the general's helmet.
Tybolg is already in Annie because it was done under Borum Darkwill's rule.
Okay.
So Tybolg is now free, Otacon is now free, and Realm is either about to be free or is currently free.
Free-ish.
Out of the Immortal Bastion, I should say. As of right now.
How many? I mean, it's old lore at this point, but it was 9 demons exist. Was that the number? I can't remember. It's right, really old lore, so it's probably not even worth referencing, but
that doesn't include the Azakana, which are like the demons of Ionia specifically.
Oh, okay.
And I believe there's more than that, so I don't think that number is correct anymore. Maybe there's 9 demons of Runeterra, and then there's Ionian demons that are specific to that region.
But
or it could be like Kindred,
at this point,
and they have different faces.
At this point, we know that Mordekaiser was somewhat adept at trapping demons in the Immortal Bastion.
Yes.
So who knows if it's just the 3 that we know about? There could be more demons trapped down there, is what I'm getting at.
And they will increase or decrease that number as Riot sees fit.
There are 10 primordial demons.
10 primordial
specifically
demons.
Yeah, but then there's lesser demons as well, it seems like.
Because we know of some of the less... I think, like, Nocturne
Tom
is
Kench
soft
would
confirmed
be a lesser one, right?
Yeah, Tom Kench would be one, yeah. I think Nocturne is also supposed to be a lesser demon. I think that's, like, soft confirmed at this point. But like Fiddlesticks would be another one of the primordial ones. And I think
Yes.
Ashlash would be one of the primordial ones.
Yes. But then Evelyn would be a lesser demon.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Matt brought up the Mel and Mbessa parallel. And I have a lot of notes on that. Down to like lyrics for Blood, Sweat, and Tears paralleling what Bite Marks is. So I have this idea that Mel and Mbessa have a very interesting relationship with Kindred, and whether they're representing the lamb or the wolf at different aspects of their life. And at first I thought they were opposites, but I realize now that they're telling the same story, but from a different like starting point. So in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, we get a flashback of Mbessa, like young Mbessa, and she's running through Shurima carrying a lamb. And that is largely thought to be like metaphorical for her innocence, for her way of thinking. It also could be pertaining to Mel, because we see that she is pregnant in the beginning of it. But likely it is just a self-reflection of her sacrificing her kind nature lamb self to the wolf in order to gain some type of power. We see the exact same type of situation with Mel starting in season 1, where she's very much a pacifist, and throughout season 2 we see her give up that innocence in order to become more powerful, mostly because she has to, and the circumstances that are surrounding her. And that is the exact same thing that we see in Blood, Sweat, and Tears with Mel. With Mbessa, I'm sorry. And so in Bite Marks, you have Mel getting a vision of her going to
the Bastion,
the Immortal Bastion, when she's in the Noxtora. And I think that is almost exactly the same thing as Mbessa seeing herself sitting on a Noxian throne in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and getting different visions of what her life could be like. But since Mel has already chosen her path at this point, she's only getting shown one version of her future because she already knows what she's going to do. Like in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Mbessa's kind of making a choice to continue fighting in that moment. When we see Mel arrive on the shores, she's already made that choice. She made that choice when she left Piltover.
Damn, I need to look more into the demon lore. I was looking up the old stuff where like we didn't know any of the lore back in the day, where people used to think that Zed became Nocturne.
Yeah.
Because of like the shadow, the tears of the shadows that he consumed, and eventually like it consumed him and he became Nocturne. But I was like, I didn't really think about the fact that Fiddlesticks is a demon. And also Ashbleth, which is Nyla's
specifically
demon.
in the cage underneath Fiddlesticks. Like that dark
thing
in the cage is the demon, and the rest of it is just like a shell for show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See, that's awesome. I need to look more into the demons, because the demon aspect of it is super cool. And I didn't really know that like flavor existed until we dove further into this.
Another thing I wanted to point out about some of the song lyrics was the line where it says, don't tell me you bleed if it washes away. I think this is a like kind of a dig at Mbessa's speech in the end of season 2 when she's talking about mages, and she says something along the lines of it doesn't give, or it like goes against the principles of Noxus, and that everything should be tested on the merit of your strength, and that being a mage kind of gives you an unfair advantage. And so like, don't tell me you bleed if it washes away is like basically calling that out in my head. But she's still like fighting through everything, and now she's going against more powerful mages, still showing that she has to prove her strength in Noxus, regardless if you are a mundane person or a mage. There's still a struggle, a power struggle in a fight that you have to do in Noxus.
I always thought it was strange that Mbessa takes that stance, because it's very non-Noxian to have that stance. Like, that's a very Demacian thought, not Noxian thought. Like, Noxus has always been very open to mages, and they have no issue with mages doing mage things. So I thought...
But the way that Mbessa grew up was with her grandfather having her pick up swords in a battlefield by hand.
Yeah.
And so it seems to be very old school in the sense of you do everything by hand, you work for what you keep. And I feel like she got that from her upbringing, that being a mage is just a way of cheating.
Did. Which is, it's just...
I mean, also at that point, she was like terrified of magic. Like, literally Canik Rukerns by her side the whole time during Arcane.
And she may have developed that because of her dealings with the Black Rose, but like like a war, like, I don't think Darius would say, yeah, magic's cheating. Darius would say magic exists, and if you want to be a strong warrior, you got to figure out how to deal with magic. Like, I feel like that's what Darius would say, not magic is cheating.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, Darius would take a mage by his side at like any point in time if it helps Noxus.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you have the tools to help? Okay, cool. Let's go.
Well,
like,
you don't see him stopping and complaining about Trundle's mace being like corrupting his axe. He's like, okay, I'm gonna deal with this now. He's not like,
well, he doesn't.
WTF, man.
He literally throws his axe away and then just is like hand-to-hand combat.
How did Darius cut through Trundle's club?
It
is made of true ice, and he dug in at least a couple inches deep into his club.
He didn't cut through.
He didn't cut through. He cut in.
He didn't cut. Yeah. But it is true ice that will froze a furnace solid. How did his axe get through true ice?
It is virtually indestructible.
There's not even runes. If there was runes on his axe, I could believe it. Because, like, okay, magical runes.
So I thought about that, KJ, and my thought process is I think that's supposed to be like, it's not supposed to be about like the weapon. I think that's like a testament to the warrior kind of thing.
They made a super big deal about it corrupting Darius and almost killing him when he picks back up the axe.
I don't know.
Like, I know, but I think the initial blow was just to show like, damn, like he's strong as hell. He's a super adept warrior to slice in like that, but he couldn't.
I get what it does narratively, and I like it visually, and it's very compelling. But lore-wise,
like, is it supposed to be indestructible?
It's like Heimerdinger exploding. Yeah.
You're not supposed to be able to damage true ice at all? Because how do you turn it into a club then? Like
diamonds cut diamonds, so it's probably true ice cutting true ice.
I suppose. But I never got the feeling that true ice was indestructible. But it does instantly freeze his axe, which checks out to me. Like, that makes a lot of sense. But I never got the feeling that true ice was like indestructible. What is more of a question to me is how he's able to then pick it back up. Like, obviously it starts corrupting his arm, but he shouldn't have been able to touch it at all. That's the one that's more of a question to me. Not that he was able to cut
I don't know if
club.
It's corruption. It kind of looked like internal frostbite. That's what it looked like to me.
It does kill you, but I think he has like either a strong enough might or will, probably might because that's his kind of thing. He's like the might of Noxus, but like to be able to withstand at least holding it for like the 5 seconds that he did. But I don't think it's like instant death. It's just most people will die instantly, but because he is big and strong, then it took a little longer, or it would have taken a little longer had he kept holding it. Yeah.
Yeah, he holds it for like a solid like 5-6 seconds.
Okay, so true ice is never mentioned as being indestructible, but it doesn't melt, and therefore it was like thought to have basically absolute zero temperature. And so with that type of temperature freeze, then it would likely be indestructible because of how compact the atoms would be.
But clearly
I think that's why it stops the blow from him. I think that's why it doesn't like cut all the way through.
Like if it was just ice, his axe would easily go through it.
Yeah,
That's not
that's what I'm
ice.
saying. Like KJ's, like a combination of what KJ's saying is like the density of it is so intense that it's able to stop that. One thing I wanted to see that I kind of combed through to find is I wanted to see, and I thought it would have been cool if like he pulled the axe out and his axe froze, and it showed like Trundle standing there, and it showed like the club like freezing back over the slice.
Yeah.
Oh
Because
yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
it did that.
Like
I'm sure
I
it healed
thought
itself.
that would have been cool. Yes.
True ice is manipulated by magic, so that's how you can carve it into whatever shape. The Iceborn have the magic to manipulate true ice.
Oh, okay. Wait, so Trundle is part of the Iceborn?
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's a descendant of the Iceborn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember. He was like blessed by Lysander or something too. Like there's something going on with him, but I also think it's BA that Trundle has an easy win, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna just throw my club too. I'm down for the hand-to-hand. Like, Trundle had that easy.
Thing, though.
Yeah, it's a troll
thing to like.
It's a troll move.
Yeah, it's to fight based on like just beating each other down. Like the reason that he's the king is because he wears a crown and beats other people up. Like that's really all it takes for trolls.
Bro, that would actually be sick as hell if you summoned Ice Pillar and that made his club go away temporarily, and then he just started like pummeling on you instead.
Oh, that would be so cool. Yeah,
that would have been sick.
He just like throws his club and like grows it into a pillar. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have a lot to say about Katarina, but I thought it was cool that they showcased all of her abilities.
Yeah, the dagger teleport was sick. I feel like a lot of people probably missed it because it was. The guy.
Oh, I said that I didn't have a lot to say about Katarina, but I do actually.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Because she succeeds in the mission. You can see in the cinematic the dude is dead on the ground.
Well,
so originally
succeeds in the mission, but we'll see if she like gets out unscathed.
Yeah, I mean.
So originally, I thought that she was sent by Swain because the letter that she gets is very cryptic and it doesn't say exactly who it's from, but all the other letters are sent by LeBlanc.
Yeah.
So
well, Swain makes sense with the timeline too.
Yeah. But then I thought, what if it's just her sending it to everybody? The ballroom that they enter in after going through LeBlanc's eye has the same top-down view as the Ocularum in episode 5 of season 2 of Arcane, when Mel is stuck inside of that cave with her brother. I think LeBlanc is in an Ocularum the entire time that she's there, and it's a spider's nest where the spider just lays in wait as you come into their den and they catch you. I think that's part of the reason that the gold pops out of the guy. It's not just an Easter egg. It is a hint to us, the same way that Kino was teleporting around and we have the random water droplets, that not something is amiss in this section. The other thing is that all of the people that are dancing around are dressed in blue and red. They're minions.
So that's what I thought too.
I think all of this is just for show, and that it is a lure to get Katarina out, for LeBlanc to either give her a proposition to join the organization, maybe kill somebody. I personally think that it could also be she wants her to double cross Swain, because Katarina is one of Swain's go-to assassins. So if she has Katarina as a double agent on the inside, spying on Swain and feeding her information, I think that would make a lot of sense too. And it also kind of parallels why LeBlanc kidnapped Mel in season 2 of Arcane, is why she's kidnapping Katarina, because she wants to use her for something and is going to give her basically a no option choice, or a one option choice.
I like that idea.
Is Katarina and Elise are the only two that we see there? We don't see any other champions?
They're the only ones whose faces that we see.
Yeah.
No. The other ones are people. They said that there are people who could have been invited to this party, but the ones in the cinematic are the ones that we actually see show up to the party.
It's possible.
So the other skins, other than, I'm sorry.
It's possible that there's two different parties. Like,
it could be. It could be one's a real party and this one is
a
like
trap.
a trap. Yeah.
It's also interesting because did you say it was Elise that sent the letters? Because Elise is the one that sent out all the letters.
No, LeBlanc.
It's
is
Elise.
it Elise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Elise is actually the one that sent out all the letters. That makes even more sense. It makes even more sense.
That makes even more sense.
Yeah. That's very interesting. It also, so with that being the case, if it is a trap for Katarina, if we go back to the comic that came out, LeBlanc is talking about using Otacon to convince somebody to do something. Like, that's the last line of the comic, is we're planting Otacon in this area to convince somebody to do something. It could be that, and my question that I told you, I have two questions, is where is Otacon planted, and who is she trying to convince, are the two big things. And that could be explained by, we're planting it in like Katarina's village or something to try to convince Katarina to betray Swain. You know, like, it could be Katarina that is being convinced by this Otacon placement in that cinematic.
I do like that angle because I had not considered that, but that does line up with everything that we were just saying.
Yeah.
I do like that. Also, I posted another picture in host chat. That is, I scoured the map, and that is the best place based on the small bit in the comic that we get of like the one either peninsula or island that LeBlanc and Vladimir are standing on. And then there's a jutting cliff behind them. And that type of topography is very specific. I only saw like 3 that looked kind of similar, and this is the best fit that I had. And it's also like relatively close to Ionia. And at the time I thought that there might be some like relation to that. But yeah, that looks like where they likely planted Otacon based on topography.
It's very suspicious that cinematic, or the Katarina part lines up so well with like League of Legends gameplay. That's very strange.
Yeah.
Because like it's supposed to be fully canon, so like they're referencing League for a reason. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And so Trundle, I would say, uses his ult in his fight with Darius when he starts like ripping off his armor.
Yeah.
Because that's like the best way to visually represent that. But
exactly.
There wasn't a lot of champion abilities in this cinematic. And Still Here was chock full of them. There was like basically every 5 seconds you could showcase either a passive or an ability being used by the champion on screen. But in this cinematic, the only time that we ever see champion abilities are between Katarina and Elise.
Well, and technically Mel, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, Trundle as well.
With Trundle with his ult, kind of, but like.
And his Q.
We didn't.
He literally tries to bite Darius's throat open.
Yeah. But Mel only uses her abilities. Mel only uses her abilities in her like vision sequence too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The one other thing I was going to say about the Katarina trap as well, or if it is a trap, is I also had that thought as well about how it was potentially like either a hallucination or like maybe the environment is a hallucination and Elise is there as an agent of LeBlanc to like keep her there or something. But you notice as Katarina is like dancing through the crowd, one of the masked people, their face like massively distorts.
It's not distorted.
And like it's like trips out, like it like frame skips. It doesn't.
It's not distorted. That mask is actually many faces on one mask. It is meant to be like a visual illusion, but the entire mask has like 5 faces on it. Yeah. Or like 3 sets of eyes.
I thought that was like a glitch in the Matrix that was like basically like what happened with LeBlanc when she was fucking up, when she was trying to like pretend to be Mel's brother. I thought that was a glitch initially, like in the system.
But then I like did some pause frames, and yeah, it's one continuous mask. There's another shot that it shows directly after that shows like the front of it, and it has like an eye on the side of it.
Yeah, I just saw that. Oh man, that's okay. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was where I was just like, huh, okay, now I'm stuck with this entire scene based off that.
But because of where we are in the timeline, Swain having Katarina kill random Black Rose members makes a lot of sense. So Katarina getting an invitation to an upscale party in Noxus with a target makes a lot of sense also. But it also makes sense that LeBlanc would know this and have Elise send all of these party invitations, because Swain would do his due diligence and make sure that this party that she's getting invited to is legit. So
that's what I'm wondering now, because
I think it's a separate party.
Maybe, or the invitations were always fake. Like, it depends on when Swain got the information, because LeBlanc would know that Swain is checking everything, right? So, and Riot like went out of their way to suggest that this is what these champions would look like if they were invited.
Mm-hmm.
Which suggests to me that Riot's saying they were not invited, but we also have very clear evidence of these letters that Elise wrote inviting them. So I'm wondering if Elise was being followed by Swain's Ravens, was sending out these letters, but only actually sent the one to Katarina. But it looks like it's a large party full of these interesting people because she wrote all those letters. But she didn't actually send the other ones. And Swain didn't get the full picture. I'm wondering. So it could still be Swain saying, yo, Katarina, go.
Elise and LeBlanc made a bunch of fake information about these other letters, but never sent them to ensure that Swain and Katarina thought that it was a real party and led her into a trap. Okay, yeah. I can see that.
I think that might be... There might be some legs on that one. Like 8 of them.
There's some legs on that land shark.
Yeah.
Technically 10. Wait, how many spider legs does she have in human form? Does she still have the 8?
I think she has 8. It's also interesting
that
like
she or does she have 6 and then the other 2 are 8?
Elise.
Well, then she should have 4, and then she has the 4 limbs of her human self.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Oh, well, I wasn't counting arms. I was just counting literal legs.
Oh. It's also interesting that Elise just stops fighting. It's not like she's regrouping or anything like that. After Katarina kills her target, or who she thinks the target is, the gold comes out and Elise just starts like creepily climbing the wall. It's not like it's like a it feels like a trap is what it feels like.
It feels like a gotcha, because then she turns into the giant spider and Katarina smiles.
She's like you played into my trap, and now I'm going to climb this wall and turn into a spider. And not attack as the spider, just be the spider.
The smile that Katarina gives is kind of like a knowing smile, like, oh, you got me, like, good one. It kind of feels like.
Because Katarina definitely is smiling. Yeah.
See, that smile for me is more just like, all right, now this is a challenge kind of thing.
Could be. But it also could be that Katarina realized that she did not kill a person. Like, that smile could be like that didn't feel like I actually killed somebody. That felt like a trap.
The gold popping out, I think, was,
Even though it is still in the visions, the guys that are suspending Mel as she's approaching the gates, those also just explode in gold.
Do they?
Yes,
they do. It looks similar with the particle effects. But it looks like golden
coins.
It's just gold dust. It's just dust. Okay. It's because like gold sparkles.
That's Mel's deal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair.
They use it as like a transition where the gold particles of the kill transition into the gold flecks of Mel.
Oh, okay. I could see that. Yeah, it's like kind of circular golden sparks.
All right, KJ,
like
what's your last point?
Just the podcast in general. I have a bunch of predictions.
Hit me with them.
They get more crazy as they go. Okay, so We've already touched on this, but I just kind of want to like go through this just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Swain is already in power at the start of the show.
Yep.
And Darius is returning and will help form the Trifrix. And I already mentioned this, but Draven supported Swain's rebellion, so Darius is more inclined to do so. Katarina is going to be working for LeBlanc and Swain, but ultimately her allegiance is going to lie with Swain. But I think she is going to be portrayed as a double agent during the show.
Okay.
I still think Mel is going to be Guile as the faceless person using her mother's mask. Now that she's coming into Noxus to reclaim her throne.
So LeBlanc is not Guile.
I think LeBlanc and Mel are going to be working together in some capacity. And that Mel is going to be like LeBlanc's proxy. But still have her own goal or ambition and not just be a puppet.
Okay.
Yes, very much agree.
And that's why LeBlanc actually respects her to be Guile, because she won't just placate to whatever LeBlanc wants. And I think she kind of likes that and respects that of her.
Or any of them, really. She's going to do what Mel wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I already said where Otacon was planted, similar geological features. I had some voice lines from Legends of Runeterra with LeBlanc and Otacon. One monster to end another is what LeBlanc says to him.
Checks out.
And I'm thinking, yeah, but like, who is the monster that Otacon is meant to stop? Is it Swain with Realm? Is it Mordekaiser?
It's got to be Mordekaiser.
Okay, but it seems like Otacon is meant to compel someone to do something.
Yeah.
And if it's not Mordekaiser, then Otacon has to be for something else. And so if this LOR line is specifically for him, one monster to end another, then like there likely is a different angle other than Mordekaiser, since he's being planted now, not to stop Mordekaiser, but to do something else.
I suppose, but Otacon could be used to convince somebody to do something as well as to fight Mordekaiser. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive.
That's fair. That's fair. And then whatever Mbessa stole is what Mel's powers came from, or where it came from. I'm thinking currently it's probably like a potion of some sort. That's my running theory. Instead of it being like a birthright thing, I think it was some type of artifact or something from Mbessa or from LeBlanc that got stolen.
Maybe one of like the broken blades of the Black Rose or something like that.
Well, okay, so the reason I think it's a potion is because it could be meant to make the host strong enough to be able to overpower a Darkin in the same way that Kayn overpowers Ross. And if it works, Mel would be able to wield a Darkin weapon, have the power of a Darkin without being taken over by a Darkin. And that's why we see, what's her name? Neferi's Blade.
In addition to her birthright powers, which potentially come from like, what's his name? Like Atreus or Pantheon or whoever potentially.
So I am leaning less towards her having birthright powers at this moment. And it being specifically stolen from LeBlanc and then somehow given to Mel while Mbessa was pregnant.
Okay. Because while LeBlanc does not use those powers, she does have the very like heavily gold themed design.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can see that. So for Noxus, we have Swain, Darius, probably gonna see Draven. I think it's extremely likely. We get Katarina, Elise. We have we've technically seen Trundle, if we consider this like the intro or the preamble.
I think this is going to be the last that we see of Trundle and the Freljord. Kind of like
I think it's just a cameo
Enemies
as well.
Music video was a prequel to Arcane, and none of the like kids playing around, none of the Echo Jinx relationship when they were kids was really portrayed in the show. Blood, Sweat, and Tears had the same thing with Mbessa, so I think this is going to be like the only part that we see of some of this. and then the show is going to be what happens after the cinematic.
Okay. We got Mel.
Mm-hmm.
So who else are we gonna see? Who's gonna throw out a prediction? Crazy or simple?
Annie. We're gonna see Annie.
Annie. Okay.
I think we're gonna see
like that one.
Talon.
Talon.
Mm-hmm. Katarina's brother.
Yeah.
Or half brother, I should say.
The
other thing about LeBlanc's markings, since you were talking about how her gold looks like LeBlanc's gold.
Yeah.
Mel's gold carvings are very angular, almost like Noxian's script. And so it doesn't, like, the more I look at the design, it seems to mirror Noxus, but with a gold coloring instead of the red, and not look like any other region.
They also changed since the end of Arcane.
Yes, I noticed that.
I will also say they look Noxian, but Noxus is an area that conquers and adapts. So, like, the basis
they
for what
imperialize,
Noxian
so it's
is.
still part of Noxus now.
Yes.
It's just new Noxus.
Yeah. Continually new Noxus. Manifest destiny for Noxus.
I have a couple more far out, like, future timeline predictions as well that I was musing.
I also think that if we see Annie, we may see Rel and potentially Riven, but I think we might see Samira too, like all of the kids that the Black Rose was experimenting on. We may see all of them.
I think Annie makes sense and Rel makes sense. I'm still iffy on Riven. I think the only time that we'll see Ionia or Ionian champions is if we get a flashback to Swain during the first invasion actually meeting the Raven on the battlefield. But I think that's probably the only time that we'll see Ionia or Ionian champions.
We did get
Oh, that's true.
We did get flashbacks like that in Arcane, so it's not impossible. Like when Victor meets Singed. Like we have flashbacks like that. So
or
it's
like
not impossible.
Silco and Jinxfy's mom and Vander at the bar.
Yep. All right, what else is way out there?
Okay, so
Galio.
for the show after Noxus is Demacia, following J4 as our main protagonist, our main hero. And I specifically put Jace parallel because even though Arcane has multiple main characters and multiple different narratives that they're telling, I think there are two like main characters from each of the regions, Piltover and Zon, where we really follow Jinx and Jace, and kind of see things from their viewpoint and their lens. Even though we know everything that's happening that other people don't, I think they are our two like grounding points in which we gauge how we feel about everything else going on in the world. And so by that I mean protagonist of the show. How everything is like measured. So J4 being the protagonist of Demacia, during the Noxian invasion of Demacia, and then the Ionia show with the second Ionia invasion, and that's when we get Riven as the protagonist, and trying to rally Ionia to actually fighting back. And then that ends with basically the end of the Awakened cinematic when you have like Ionia going against Sion coming in with the Grey Legion, and we actually get to see that finally play out. And then here's what I think there's a movie after that. So there's 3 shows, and then I'm calling a movie, and it's going to be a Ruination movie about all of the reckoning or the harrowing, the last harrowing. And that would make us pretty caught up to the actual timeline that we're in now. And that's why I think we go through those things first, so that the narrative team has time to write new stories, because as of right now, we've gone backwards in time from the furthest point that we knew so far. And Awaken / Ruination is the farthest that we've been in the timeline. And so because of this cinematic, we now know where we are, or where Arcane falls in the timeline. So we went backwards a little bit, and now it seems like we're catching up to present day as we knew it. And then once that happens, then they get to write new stuff. But I feel like it's 3 shows and a movie away from that.
I would be surprised if we get a Ruination movie. I think if we get a movie, it'll be a Shuriman movie.
I also want to see how they're going to do the live action stuff. Because, like, to kind of circle back to what I brought up before about, like, the DC universe and how James Gunn is doing it, he is specifically casting actors as the voice actors for the characters as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, his first step into the new DC universe is a show called Creature Commandos. And people like, I can't think of his name, but Hopper from Stranger Things. You guys know that actor? Like, he played Frankenstein's monster in Creature Commandos. God, I'm so upset that I don't remember his name right now. But anyways, if they ever have a live-action Frankenstein, James Gunn said he plays Frankenstein. Like, that is
so they
the
can have
reason
continuity with
that.
the voices.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if they will do something similar for the live action. I feel like that might be a little too far. And it also depends on how much live action they do. Like, if Riot does, like, hey, we only plan in the next 15 years of making, like, 2 live action movies, maybe throw that out the window. Maybe just go for, like, whoever you want and don't really worry about, like, that connectivity so much. But I wonder if they will do something like that. Because for a Ruination event, like, you're going to need choreography. You're going to need not just, like, good acting, but you're going to need the look of the character, and also potentially some sort of, like, physical ability involved and that sort of thing.
So the reason I, like, hyper emoted at the beginning of that is you made me think that it could actually be a Camivore, like, prequel to Ruination as a live action. And then have a part 2 that actually, like, goes into, like, we have the part 1 where we have Viego and Isolde, like, actually together, and, like, what Camivore is like, because that's something that we have never seen and we have very few stories on. And then it ends with her death. And then we have a part 2 that is, like, him coming back and trying to resurrect her. It could, I guess, be a show, but I feel like
live action things are easier to. Yeah,
live action things I think are a lot easier to put into movie format.
That's also, I think it is unlikely to be Ruination or Camivore because it's already been very fleshed out. Like, I don't believe you've read the book, but, like, that whole story has been very fleshed out already by the book. So
yes,
I know that a lot of people haven't read the book, obviously, and it is a very popular story. But I don't think, like, you got to look at it from the perspective of the people that are going to be in charge of the movie. I don't think they're going to want to, like, go back into the book. I think they're going to want to tell a different story, which is why I think it would be, like, if there is to be a movie, it would be, like, a full shift away from what we've done, and it would be, like, Shurima or Freljordian movie. That's what I would think.
Is Ruination from Viego's perspective?
It's from Callista's perspective.
I think as a Camivoran backstory for what old Camivore was like, and then Viego on his quest to bring back Isolde, being told from Viego's perspective,
it'd be boring.
I think would be a fresh take on it. Okay. And it also, in this predicted timeline, this is after 3 shows. So this is multiple years after the Ruination book would have come out.
I guess it wouldn't be necessarily that boring, but the exciting stuff happens with Callista. The majority of, like, after Isolde gets hit by the poison dagger, Viego just hangs out by her bed the whole time. Like, that's all that Viego does throughout those months that Callista is like searching around the world trying to find a cure for Isolde, Viego is just like losing his mind next to his Isolde's bed, which has some interesting, like, you could tell an interesting story there, but the much more exciting story is happening around Viego. Like, the story being told from Hecarim's perspective would probably be more interesting than Viego's perspective. I think Viego's, like, from Viego's perspective, it's just, I'm gonna give away all of the money, and all of these crazy healers that can't actually heal anything are going to come in and say, oh, we couldn't heal Isolde, sorry. Like, that's basically what Viego's perspective is these people come in and say, we can cure her, sorry, it didn't work. Like, that's all that's happening for Viego. But there's a lot of interesting stuff, like, happening around Viego.
One other thing I would like to throw into that as well is we might not actually get anything on the Ruination story, purely just because one other thing they said in the dev video is the fact that games will also be coming out, like mini games and potentially like smaller stuff like Bandle City, Ruination, like the different games that they dropped for that. Those will also be storytelling devices for the universe where like they don't get shows, they don't get movies. So maybe they like sift through some of their old stuff like that and pull back some of those and be like, oh yeah, this was actually like canon events that we're going to include. And like, we won't make content for these. If you want to know more about them, there'll be like niche information that go play the game, and that's how you know more about this, or that's how you know like the extra Easter eggs that everybody else knows. I would love to see a Shurima movie, and it's pretty dumb, but I would love for you to get some of the old, well, they're old now. God, that sucks. Some of the actors from the Mummy movie, from like the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, and make them some like Shuriman actors. I would love
Brendan
to see
Fraser's
that,
an
dude.
old man now, dude.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Brendan Fraser. He doesn't look like... I don't know what they would make Shurimans look like, but I'm talking more about like...
You want them to bring The Rock back. That's what you want.
No. I was thinking like the only person who I can remember his name is it's like Arnold like Vosloo or something. The actor that like plays Imhotep.
Yeah.
Like I would love to see like bring him back in a role. Doesn't have to be a big run, just like some sort of cameo role to just like bring people in and be like, hey, we're making this like kind of Egyptian themed like desert society movie. Put him in the trailer.
He could be like one of Xera's followers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He could also like, play like Renekton. He only has to do it for like part of the movie because then it turns into Lizard Man.
Actually, I think it would be cooler if he was Nasus.
Yeah.
The sandstorm whipping around him, and it like it takes like a face as it like whips around at first.
Yeah, he's just basically Anubis again.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to see something like that.
I think an Acathia Void show would be, or a movie would be really cool. Also, just showing the Acathia War.
Dude, I'd want to see that animated. I feel like that would look so beautiful animated, though.
You could have like Zillion telling it from like out of time, and just like giving us a story time, and have him be the narrator.
Zillion being the narrator is sick. It also, it's an interesting concept because you can basically have it end how Arcane, like if you cut Arcane's last episode in half, could be how this show ends, where it's like, yeah, we basically messed up and destroyed the whole world. Oops. But there's no like conclusion to that. That's just the state of the world now. Like all of Acathia is now just consumed by the void, and these void monsters are running around causing mayhem. Oops, we don't have a nice conclusion for you here. Just accept that that's
you end that with like, you end that either with the Voidborn starting to come out of the rift, or with Ixtal like coming out of hibernation years later, or even going into hibernation. Because
they go into hibernation because of that, yeah.
Yeah. But you could either end the show with the direct aftermath, like a couple years after the war with Ixtal, or like hundreds of years later when Kiana's story actually starts to pick up. and she like Piltover starts coming in, so that there's at least a tie-in with Arcane fans. Like, oh, I know those machines, and it's them coming into Ishtal after they've been isolated.
All right. Well, I think we're well off the rails at this point. We're an hour and 20
I'm sorry.
in, so I think it's time to call it at this point. We're, well, thanks for watching. I always do that. Why do I always do an? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
It's been fun. Peace out.